Hey guys, and today's video we are back on our hype train for Warhammer 40k 8th edition, and this week has been quite a good week for the Warhammer community. We've got plenty of new information hitting our inboxes, hitting the community webpage, and this video we're going to go through all of the changes that we've been given in those updates. So what's happened in week 3? Quite a lot, as I've just said. So we've got details about infantry now, more information about how characters are going to work within your army. We've had a couple of faction focuses. The first one is on the Astra Militarum, so the Imperial Guard. Had an update on weapons. We've had information on Datasheets. The second faction focus on the Eldar, and some information on points and power levels. So plenty to cover in this video, so stick around. There's some funny bits in here I hope you'll enjoy. And we'll start covering through those details now. So the big thing on infantry this week then, as we know, everything can hurt everything else. But most importantly this week we've been given an introduction to the new wound chart. So we can see it's vaguely similar to how things used to work. So strength is double the toughness. We now need just a 2+ to wound. If your strength is greater than toughness, it's 3. If it's equal, it's 4. If it's lower, it's 5. And if it's more or double or more than lower, then it's a 6+ to wound. So those high toughness vehicles against your last gun are going to be wanting 6s to wound. So that is the highest roll required to wound. So what else do we know about wounding other than the chart then? So we know that everything can wound everything. We've heard that for the last couple of weeks now, since the Q&A, live Q&A session that we had, and we can see from the wound chart that 6s are the highest roll to get any kind of wounds against those high toughness creatures. And realistically though, it's going to take a lot to kill those big tough things. So an estimate of around about 500 bolters to kill a Gorkanaut with its 18 wounds and its good save and high toughness. But the big thing about infantry now is that models can fire at different targets, so the units now have split fire in effect. So your bolters can go one direction, the flamer can go another, and the heavy weapon in the squad can go at a different target. Far more realistic, and weapons shouldn't be wasted now. So in effect, what do we know with the stats that we have? So if we take our last cannon versus a Space Marine now, we know that the last cannon, if it's stationary, requires a 3 to hit, and heavy weapons have a -1 modifier to hit if they move, so a 4+ to hit if moved. It's more than double the toughness of the Marine. It's a strength 9 versus toughness 4, so it's a 2 to wound. And with a -3 modifier to the armour penetration, it will give a Marine a 6+ save in the open. And the last cannon, being super powerful, causes D6 wounds, but they don't carry over. So a 1 wound model will only ever receive 1 wound. A 2 wound model will receive D3, but if you roll that 3, then the excess wound is wasted in effect. So good against vehicles with lots of wounds over 3. How does that work against armour then? So we know the stats of a standard Dreadnought. So our last cannon versus Dreadnought example. So same to hit and same modifier if it's moved. 3+ to wound this time because Dreadnought's a toughness 7, so it's not more than double. And the same armour modification gives a 6+ save in the open. But the D6 wounds this time, because the Dreadnought has a lot of wounds, your last cannon has the potential to be far more effective. And being a single figure, there's no worry about wounds not wrapping over into other units. It will just cause a flat D6 wound. So anti-armour really does work in this edition from what we can see so far. So let's move into the character changes then. So our good old friend Gazgul here is one of those many characters. Your army is typically going to have at least one character in it, and with some of the force organisations, to get those command points you're going to be wanting several characters. So there's been quite a few changes with the way that these work. The characters can no longer join units. Their abilities have an area of effect to friendly keyword type units, so no more Death Stars. They cannot be targeted from shooting unless they are the nearest model to that enemy gun line, or it has more than 10 wounds. So a boot Guilliman on 9 wounds, for example, cannot be targeted. But your bigger creatures like Magnus the Red, who's been indicated to have at least a dozen wounds, can be shot at because he is ginormous. And finally, Heroic Intervention. So if you're nearby a marine unit or whatever gets charged, and you have a character that's nearby, he's not going to watch those combats go on without jumping in himself, so you can move him into combat. Next up then, we have a faction focus on the Imperial Guard. Now, the earlier faction focus we had on Chaos was very slim on detail. It was more of a sales pitch in my opinion. But we have some good information on our friends in the Imperial Guard. So what we do know is that commissars are going to limit the effect of a bad morale roll. So either using his leadership, or he could have a modifier or whatever to the number of casualties you take. We know that rattling snipers can target those independent characters. So when we just went through the character rules about not being targeted, the rattling sniper, now whether this is a specific sniper rule or just an ability for the rattlings, they can target characters that are a bit further away. But some stats on the Lehman Russ battle tank as well. And those basic figures you can just see on the screen there. We also know that orders are now passed automatically, and there are 7 to choose from, and that front rank fire, second rank fire looks pretty nifty, doubling the amount of shots. So we also had an update on weapons then, so how about your guns?
Okay, so what do you need besides a miracle?
Guns. Lots of guns.
Neo. No one has ever done anything like this.
That's why it's going to work.
So the new gun rules then, especially for what we've got information on now, is that twin linked now means that you get double the amount of shots before. So your twin linked heavy bolter used to be 3 shots re-rolling misses, it's now a flat heavy 6. Twin linked las cannons, for example, are now going to be firing 2 shots. As to quad linked, that's going to be very exciting to see. Combi weapons can fire all the parts of their guns all the time now, so a combi bolter flamer, you can still fire both parts instead of the one shot, but if you fire both you are a -1 to hit. And finally the battle cannon, so we now know that's heavy D6 causing D3 wounds, so a maximum churn out, if you get your good dice right, can kick out 18 wounds in a single go, enough to ruin some really big heavy armour, but a lot more limited against lighter infantry. Big one we've all been waiting for then is Datasheets. So we've had an example here for the Rubric Marines, which I'm going to put up on the screen in a second. Full of information now, so we now have that troop icon, which we're fairly familiar with, the power level, but not the points, the unit profile, war gear options with all the weapon stats, well nearly all the weapon stats of that particular unit are included per sheet, so no more cross-referencing. Abilities and keywords, so no more universal special rules, which means you haven't got to flick through the rulebook 10,000 times. And the points of units and gear, as I've said, are separated, which means that Games Workshop can adjust the points of a unit a little bit easier without having to rewrite a codex or a datasheet. So here's the example we've been given of the Rubric Marines. We can see at the top there the icon of indicating troops, a little triangle. It's a power level of 8, and then you can see as you add more members of the unit to that army or to that unit, your power rating goes up by up to +18, so this could be a 26 power level unit. Then we have all the weapons. We can see force axes and force swords. We can see swords are now better than axes with armour penetration, but not quite so good on strength. We've got all the Inferno weapons and the Soul Reaper guns and flamers, which is great. And then we have all the options and abilities below it. So we can see the options here for the Aspiring Champion upgrades, and then the Psyker information, abilities, especially with some of the unique abilities of the Thousand Suns. And then we have faction keywords for building your force organisation, and then keywords below that will affect generic units, so infantry cover or Psyker special rules, and then the Rubric Marine special rule. Moving on then, we have the faction focus on the Eldar. So almost as good as the Imperial Guard information, a little bit lighter again, somewhere sitting between what we know from the Chaos faction focus and the Imperial Guard one. So we know that Phoenix Lords are going to be pretty beastly. 2-up saves, Aziman's Sword does mortal wounds for example. Our good old friends Battle Focus, Guide, Doom and Fortune will all be back in some variety or other. Striking Scorpion Mandiblasters are going to cause mortal wounds. Banshees are going to be super fast and potentially always strike first. And the Avatar of Cain is going to be an utter beast. And we've got an indication of his famous weapon, the Wailing Doom. Lots of wounds potential causing here, and lots of armor penetration modifiers. So he is going to rinse it in combat and in the way into combat with his Assault 1 version of that weapon. We move on to a bit of power levels and points then.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!"
So power levels and points. So power levels are now your rough approximation of a unit's effectiveness, and we've seen that in the data sheet for the Rubric Marine, starting off at a power level of 8 and going up to a maximum of 26 if you bulk out the unit. It's an easy way of setting up a quick or narrative game with your friends, and you can see that the power level we know for a basic Marine is 5, but a Rubric Marine is 8, and that represents the fact they've got a really good save, some more interesting power options and so on. So it tries to balance the game in a very hard and fast, very sort of quick and dirty kind of way. We've also had indication of Marine points with grav pistols and multi-melter points, and a big change there is summoning. No longer can you summon as many models as you damn well like within your points limit. You now have to put aside a portion of your army points limit, say 200, 300, 400 points out of a 2k game, and that's the maximum you can now summon. However, that summoning isn't fixed, so if you want to bring in some Screamers of Tzeentch, for example, or you want to bring in pick any other demon, a Fate Weaver or whatever, as long as you've got the points, you can then fluctuate between the type of unit and the scenario that you're facing on the battlefield. So if you need a quick, hard and fast melee unit that needs to bolster a particular failing flank, then bring in your Bloodletters. But if you need something else, then you can do so. But no more 2,000 points, but you've got 1,000 points worth of summoning in your turn. And I think that's going to be good. Might upset a few people, but I think that's the way to go for the overall balance. So there we go, that's this week 3's update. I hope you enjoyed that quick video, and looking forward to more releases and more information as we progress through to the final release of the game. I'm still very excited about it. My hobby room is still a complete mess as I'm still redecorating, but hope to get some actual model and hobby content up for you rather than just sort of focusing on a bit of news at the moment. But until next time, hope you enjoy what you're seeing so far. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give us a comment if you're enjoying the content and you're enjoying the road to 8th edition, and I'll catch you on the next video.